Hi everyone, my name is Amanda. I'm an education major and a PTK officer at Phoenix College. If you're not familiar, this video is a part of a larger interview series our chapter is creating to look into issues we feel as a community could use some more attention, so be sure to check those other videos out. As someone who's pursuing a degree to become an educator, the dramatic shift to online had me curious to see how K-12 schools have been tackling this challenge. In this episode, I talked with Robert Catten from Riverbend Preparatory Academy in Laveen to see how his schools operated during the COVID-19 pandemic. Catten serves as the principal for Riverbend Preparatory Academy, and while this is his first year at Riverbend, he's been working with the community with their feedback to adjust the school's academic plan. I want to say thank you to him for sitting down with me for this interview, and we'll cut right to that. Thank you.
All right, well, good morning. Today I have Mr. Catten here that is a principal in the Valley. How are you doing today, Mr. Catten?
Very well, very well. Thanks for having me.
Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate you coming. And today we're going to be talking about what education has been like during the pandemic. And of course, you're a principal at a school in the Valley as well. Could you tell me a little bit about the school that you work at?
School is in a vibrant community. It's actually a charter school. This is my first year there. We currently have approximately 300 students in our care. We are a K-8 school, very dedicated staff. Most folks have been there several years and know the community well and are always willing to go above and beyond to make sure that our young people in the community have what they need. So I'm very honored to be in the new school in this community.
Well, it sounds like they're pretty lucky to have you there too. Well, I know at this point the pandemic has been going on we're getting up to almost a year now to the day. How has the response of your school changed over that year? Because I know none of us expected to be going this long with any response for the school.
Certainly. So I started in August, just trying to get the history of the school prior to my arrival. Obviously, everywhere in the Valley shut down back in March 2020. Devastating. Obviously, we know that it's had a huge impact even today on our scholars. At the time, there was no in-person learning at all. Since then, we've modified that. We actually have offered some in-person learning in addition to the virtual platform, which we continue to offer throughout the year. Ideally, my motto all along has been every 3 weeks or so, do a snapshot, see where we are, and kind of gauge our approach or our movement from there. Obviously, a lot of this has involved input from the community, from our teachers and staff as well. But again, in this case, some of the things I've seen, we've moved from, again, strictly really nothing happening to at least a hybrid model for our learners, which offers the community some solace that, hey, we're being listened to, and we still have a home here at the school, even if our students aren't in person.
I think that's pretty wonderful. You know, as you mentioned, this is your first year being a principal at this school. So what kind of challenges have you faced being a new principal at a school during a pandemic?
Certainly. I'd say first and foremost, obviously COVID-19, different responses from different communities, different districts, just trying to tailor the response and be very collaborative and open and empathetic with the needs of our community. Me being new to a charter has been something I've had to work with as well. So learning from the inside how the charter works, different regulations, different expectations, that's been a task, but it's been fun. I've enjoyed that. Obviously, learning the new community and the culture of the school has been both challenging and rewarding for me. So multiple layers. One of the things I struggled with most, I think, early on especially, was not really interacting with children. So most recently, we've had that opportunity to have children in school. So that's brought me a lot of joy, over the past few months.
As someone that's going into education myself, I just can't imagine what it's like to be on the school grounds and not to have students throughout that you're actually teaching and interacting with. And it's, where you're just seeing people over the computer, which, as you know, is very different, but, not having the hallways busy and stuff. So I'm sure that's definitely been an interesting thing to deal with.
Sure.
But, something that we've definitely seen throughout the Valley is that, from one school to another, one place to another, our responses has been different because the people in our community has been different as well. And some communities are better equipped to go 100% online and some communities are not. So how's the demographics in your community for your school impacted the decisions that y'all have made?
The school demographics are similar to what I've been used to in my previous experience as well. Obviously, predominantly Hispanic, Latino community. We do have a large population of African American students and a smaller percentage of Caucasian students and Asian American, as well as Native American students as well. I think for me, there wasn't so much of an adjustment in my thought process for the scholars on campus. I think one of my biggest considerations was, one, the technology in the Title I school primarily was a huge issue for us. So ensuring that we had enough resources to provide for families at home who needed them was a challenge early on. We did have some outdated computers. Fortunately, we've received, through some grant funding, new computers, and we're close to, if not at one-to-one, we're definitely a lot closer to one-to-one than we were when I started. So I was thankful that that was already started prior to my arrival. So that was one piece, the technology, and we seem to have worked that out very well. I think a second consideration was, for me, knowing about vaccinations. This is something that we actually have, our staff has been doing really well with vaccinations. I would say at least 50% of the staff that I know of has already received the first and possibly the second doses, so they're completely vaccinated and ready to go. But that may not be true for our community, for the families and within our community, maybe not fully trusting the process. So that's something that I think about continuously. We on staff, we're in good shape, but what about when children go home? Is that something that they have to contend with? So that's something that I think about constantly.
I think that's pretty amazing that you think about like how those students are being affected even when they go home as well. And I think it's really important to consider the overall viewpoint of the student, not just when they're in the classroom. Well, what are some of the biggest challenges that you might have faced, and trying to determine what the best approach is for your school and the community as y'all have made decisions of how to handle things during this time?
Sure. I think you mentioned one earlier, just it was a disparate set of approaches, so many different places, so many different options. I guess the good part is that there were options. So that part I take solace in. But one of the things that my very measured approach, as I mentioned earlier, again, 3-week snapshots, pretty much, maybe no more than 4 at the time. Constant surveys to families in the community, getting feedback. What's your comfort level? Is it something that you need that we maybe can provide in addition to what we've already done here at the school site? Talking with the teachers and staff, getting feedback from them. And one of the first things I did upon my arrival was to set up one-on-one meetings with the teachers. For one, to get their feel for how comfortable they were with where we were as a school and their comfort level with teaching under these circumstances, but also kind of to get their perspective of the historical context of the school and where they wanted to move as an organization. So those were a couple of challenges early on, just really getting that feedback. Again, a very measured approach. Also looking at the data was probably one of the biggest things that I've done. I know the Maricopa County updates the dashboard weekly, so always every week on Thursday, if I know it's out on Thursday, I may not print it on Thursday, but shortly after I'll get the data just to see where the numbers are, specifically in Levine, in our school area, and kind of go from there. Again, what do the numbers say? Where are we? How are our mitigation strategies working, which have been phenomenal for us as well. So again, some of the challenges, but again, some of the data that I considered as far as our approach moving, through the year. One of the really positive things that I mentioned, most of our staff is vaccinated or in the process of being vaccinated, but we began school in early February, and we've made it 5 weeks since we reopened to in-person learning, and now we're on spring break. So for me, that was a success. We actually went a little beyond, we stretched beyond what the metrics I had been using every 3 weeks to 5 weeks, and again, we did it successfully, so I was happy about that.
That sounds really wonderful, and I'm sure it's been good for the students too, having that bit of normalcy, being able to come back to the school and be able to interact with their students, their teachers, and everything too.
Absolutely.
So with having transitioned online back in March, and figuring out every few weeks how y'all were going to handle that, what new tools or techniques have y'all used for not only teaching but also interacting with students and family?
So as far as the tools, we do have some curricula options online, which have been beneficial for teachers and our scholars at home. Obviously, we know working in a virtual environment required a huge amount of effort. Again, prior to my arrival, just so much work was done ahead of time. One of the first comments I made to the staff was that I was very impressed by how they transitioned pretty much on a dime from in-person completely to, really high quality lessons that were posted online via Zoom. It was just phenomenal to see that. So teachers are still very well versed in that and cognizant of that. So it's one of the things that we still weekly, in addition to facilitating those Zoom lessons, some teachers go beyond that. We ask for an hour, a couple hours a day. Some teachers are trying to do it virtually the entire day. So again, really ensuring that we're reaching out to our scholars. So that's one new tool that I know will last. Is it difficult? Yes, it is. I know it's not easy. I've heard that from several teachers, but they're very apt to it. One of the things I love about our staff and teachers is that they're go-getters. They want to try it. They want to do the best that they can, for our students. So that's been beneficial. As far as other tools or things that I've learned, I mentioned the dashboard that I utilize. Again, that's not something that we created, but something that, again, is just a metric that I think is important. I'm not sure if there's any other tool or technique that I would take away. The surveys were helpful as well. So
I know for me, when we got that email that things were going to be going online, and I work at Phoenix College and I work tutoring a lot of students, and that email came out over the weekend, and on Monday I was supposed to be holding a review, and I'm like, how am I supposed to do this virtually? And we all had to figure out what we were doing right away. And it's definitely been fun watching how that's evolved. I know that first day I held everything over Skype, trying to hold up the paper to the camera, and that's definitely changed pretty drastically to something a lot more cohesive that works better. So it's been fun learning how to do all of it, though. As someone that's going to be going in education a couple of years from now, something that I keep wondering as we go through all of this, and I keep watching how we've had to evolve and adjust as our response to the pandemic, I keep wondering, how this is going to change for even when I start teaching, because there is that possibility that the landscape might look very different than how it was post-pandemic. And how do you think all of this is actually going to affect education on a long term?
So long term, it's funny you ask that question. I will say, for me, I raved about Zoom and how our teachers are going above and beyond. You can ask any of the teachers on staff. I'm not a fan of virtual learning by any means, at least not in K-8. I'm not. It's that interaction. It's that interaction to me, that personal interaction is really huge. It really does make a difference to have children face to face and collaborate and really have opportunity to play and learn together, and not just what's on paper, what we're required to teach, or what our teachers are required to, the lesson plans and the standards, but again, learning social interactions and really being invested in the community. And how does that feel in a school setting? So those you just can't do via Zoom. That'll never change. However, I know, and I've told my teachers this as well, there will be families who they won't come back. They won't feel comfortable, and we get that. But I feel good that our teachers are capable of providing the service to those families. So that's something that really, again, gives me great comfort. So long term, I think a smaller percentage of families will be at home, but I still fully feel that we will have some who will be hesitant to come in. Other long-term changes, I think it just changes the way we think about our outreach. It teaches, I think, another form of empathy for us as educators and adults as well. One of the issues early on I mentioned was, maybe technology. So it's hard for me to expect a child to dive into his or her learning when I know he or she doesn't have access to technology, or even a much larger scale, their family, maybe someone, both people in the household or whoever's in the household lost jobs. That's their priority. So we had to develop ways and think of other ways to reach them and make sure that we were supporting them. So I think that will still be there, that sense of empathy that we have for others, as opposed to, hey, it's all about my class, it's about my standards, we have to get this done. Look, this family needs support in a different way. So let's do what we can to at least speak with them and kind of hear what their needs are and see what we can do to help support. Other long-term, I just think that loss of that social interaction. One of the things that we're planning to begin after spring break is we've opened up for an opportunity for some clubs and activities after school. So again, metrics are going in the correct direction for us. We know how important it is. I haven't taught high school as well in my career. That was one of my biggest pushes for our students. Hey, it's absolutely what I teach in this classroom and your service to community, but you should always get involved in something else. It'll help you as a distraction, but it enriches, it builds you. So that's something I'm happy, excited about long-term is moving more in that direction to give people that opportunity to again, participate in other ways. So
those relationships that you build not only after hours for school, but also in the classroom are so incredibly important for students. And yeah, I think that's pretty amazing that y'all are looking to bring more of that back, because I know that's something that students are definitely missing right now a lot too.
Certainly.
Well, what has been some of your favorite things that have come out of this? I know this has obviously been a learning experience for all of us, but I know we all also have things that we've really enjoyed that's come out of it as well.
Sure. Just the commitment I mentioned earlier, the commitment of the team. Just work with some phenomenal educators who are really more than willing to do more than is required. It's just so excited to see that. So that's been a favorite of mine. Interacting with families, and granted, I haven't done it with all of our families. I know I've had Zoom meetings, again, that's a little tough, but we've gotten used to that. But actually face-to-face interactions with families when they've come on campus, whether it's at drop-off or dismissal, or if they're just coming in to drop off a laptop or pick up a packet, having those interactions. And really, it's one thing to hear something about a community. It's another thing to see it for yourself. So I've seen that sense of really community pride that people have in our school. Favorites, children really investing in the process, even in online. I've sat in on, I don't know how many classes via Zoom, and they're invested. So that was fun. I've actually taught a couple classes via Zoom, and it was different, but again, I could see them smiling. They were asking questions. They wanted to know more about me or about the school. So those are definitely some highlights.
That sounds pretty amazing. It sounds like the school is pretty lucky to have you too. So
I'm very lucky to be there. So
it's cannot be stated how important it is to be invested in the community that you're involved with, and especially during this time where a lot of us are inside of our houses all the time, we feel like we've lost that sense of community. So it's good to hear that you're keeping that going too.
As much as possible. Absolutely.
Well, I really appreciate you coming on today and talking with me a little bit about what it's been like teaching during COVID. And I appreciate you taking the time.
Well, again, I thank you for inviting me, and stay safe. And if you need anything else, please let me know.
Thank you.